up on the long driveway. Snow was wet. My snow blower got choked up.
There's nothing worse than that.
So when you paid
Yeah, of course. It's not happening.
oops, I'm in your way.
No, you're okay.
So where's the color go? Oh, color goes to go around?
Yeah.
Yes, it was a little bit easier for them to get the lights in there.
Go around like that? So if I got over there, I could
Yeah,
face
you can see the
I
face.
could face him, then he would fall in.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Oh, it's so wonderful to be here, and I'm so excited. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'd like to start by asking everyone to please stand for the presentation of The Color by the Hudson Valley Alumni Guard and the American Legion John Livingstone Post 1466. Now. Thank you very much. And now, if we could all please remain standing as our honoree, Ralph Osterhoudt Sr., will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of Ralph's family and friends, especially Martin, who's helped us with this incredible ceremony, but all of his family and friends who have traveled both near and far to join us for our Veterans Hall of Fame ceremony. I'd also like to thank the team at FDR Presidential Library and Museum, Cliff, Corey, and Deanne, for opening this beautiful space to our event. All of you, please take a seat. Every year, I have an incredible privilege of nominating a distinguished veteran from our district for the induction into the New York State Senate Veterans Hall of Fame. This recognition is reserved for veterans who have not only displayed exceptional valor during their military service, but have also made significant contributions to their communities. I first learned of Ralph's remarkable story in 2022 through his advocacy against the closure of Castle Point VA Medical Center in Wappingers Falls. Ralph played an important role within a coalition of veterans and leaders from all levels of government who fought passionately to preserve vital healthcare services for our veteran community here locally. After months of collective advocacy, the VA finally halted its plan protecting healthcare services for nearly 7,000 veterans in the Hudson Valley. This year, when it came time for me to select a veteran for the State Senate's Veterans Hall of Fame, one name consistently emerged in our conversations with community members, and that was Ralph Osterhoudt Sr. A decorated World War II veteran, a local champion uplifting veterans' needs, and someone with a legacy of service to both his community and his country that transcends the call of duty, making him an outstanding choice for this year's honor. We decided to host today's ceremony on the Roosevelt Estate because we know it holds a special place in Ralph's heart from the many days he spent here in his youth. During the summers, he worked as a groundskeeper, tending to the lawns and planting trees. It was during one of those hot summer days, while he was operating the mowing tractor, that Ralph had an unforgettable encounter. Eleanor Roosevelt herself emerged, stopping by to chat, bearing a pitcher of ice-cold water. And personally, is one of my favorites. That is an incredible, incredible moment in time in history. So wonderful. Today, as we gather in this historic setting, we hope to add another meaningful chapter to the memories associated with this cherished place. It was also here at the Roosevelt Estate that a 15-year-old Ralph would report as a member of the Ground Observer Corps, a civilian defense program with the U.S. Air Force. Alongside a group of local volunteers, he was entrusted to monitor the skies over the Hudson Valley and activities on the Hudson River for any anomalies. Ralph dedicated 5 nights a week, from 8 p.m. to midnight, to keep a vigilant watch. No binoculars, just a chair, a lantern, and a stove for heat, and a telephone that connected to a military unit stationed in Roosevelt's house. Risking one's life for their country is inherently selfless and remarkably brave, a level of service few of us will ever know. Ralph was just 18, about 2 weeks shy of his high school graduation at FDR High, when he was drafted into the Army to serve in World War II as part of the 575th Field Artillery Battalion. Thousands of miles from home, Ralph stood on the front lines of history to protect our world from one of the greatest evils of our time. Today, we have a unique opportunity to say thank you to a man whose service to this country has helped ensure the gift of freedom remains a constant for all of us. Ralph was just one of 30 liberators of Auschwitz when Russian forces ceded control of the concentration camp to the United States. He was also a survivor of the Battle of the Bulge, in which his unit was responsible for destroying Nazi bridges, ammunition, and fuel supplies. His accolades tell a story of valor and devotion: the French Medal of Honor, 3 Bronze Star medals, and the Purple Heart. And his service is a reminder of the immense price paid for the freedoms and liberties that we hold so dear. A price paid in the currency of human courage, resilience, and sacrifice. The word hero feels almost inadequate to describe the full extent of Ralph's patriotism, advocacy, and all that he means to this community, his Legion, and his loved ones. Ralph once called Memorial Day the most important day of the year, and his steadfast efforts over the years to be a torchbearer, amplifying veterans' stories, and ensuring that the sacrifice of veterans and their families are honored and remembered is a testament of his own selflessness. Inducting Ralph into the Senate Veterans Hall of Fame is our opportunity to ensure his legacy is among those forever remembered. Our opportunity to say thank you to a man who has so humbly dedicated his life to making a positive impact on the world around him. We know that Ralph has lived his life driven with purpose and with love, rather than for ceremonies and for spotlight. We know that any of the actions that he has taken have not been to be honored or to be remembered because they were the right things to do, and he was driven by that call for service. But today, we proudly uplift a man who is deeply deserving of this recognition. It should be no surprise that there are many people whose lives Ralph has touched, and we have a few here today who would like to help honor him for this well-deserved moment. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Micah Thamus, the commander of American Legion Post 1303, where Ralph is a longtime active member.
This is going to be tough. Ralph's family has been around a long, long, long time. His distant relatives came over in the 1630s. They were on the first ship from Holland to settle the Hudson Valley for the Dutch companies. So let's give them a round of applause. She had already mentioned, Senator already mentioned that he worked here at the estate for mowing and taking ground scares. Back in the Depression years, any work was to be run after. So the Osterhoudt family sought work at the estate and they received it. And Ralph has fond memories of that. In 1944, March 1944, I was born. In the late part of March of 1944, Ralph received his draft notice. So we got a little gap of time here. All right? But Ralph reported for duty, took his basic training, and by December of 1944, he was in France. He landed at Le Havre, went to Camp Lucky Strike, which we visited on our Normandy trip, and then he went to the Comar Market. Carney Rifle will go into that a little bit deeper. We'll speed forward to 2007. I ran for town board, I was elected, and one of the members of the town board was Jim Monks. Jim Monks got one of our get-togethers through an American Legion enrollment form in front of me. He says, fill this out and sign it, give me 40 bucks. Rest is history. If it wasn't for Jim Monks, I probably would have never met and got to associate with Ralph Osterhoudt. So I just mentioned Jim here because he was the kingpin that got us together. I started going to the Hyde Park Legion, one or two meetings, and then Jim says, go over to see Ralph. So I went over to see Ralph. Ralph says, what's your hat size? I gave him a hat size. He says, give me 40 bucks. Rest is history. Rest is history. Well, being a young guy and not turning down requests, I rose up through the offices of the American Legion. I eventually became commandant, or commander. And since then, I've been commander. I must be doing a good job. But Ralph and I started forming this kind of partnership. He's a Pisces, I'm a Pisces. Pisces get along really good together. And Ralph wanted to do things in a post, and I threw out ideas, and it always gelled. Ralph would do the logistics, and I would be basically the gopher, go and do it. And Ralph was always right. Every time he came up with a plan, it was always right. So we had many enjoyable, rememberable get-togethers, holiday parties, picnics. He was also instrumental. I didn't realize he had so much renowned respect for Memorial Day, so what Michelle just said. He always put grand store in the Memorial Day parade. He says, we got to have a Memorial Day float. So I said, okay, what do we do? So he read out a bunch of things, and we did it. And ever since then, we've been doing it because of Ralph. So I don't think we've ever had a disagreement on anything. We've had a few tight conversations, but basically it always ironed out. If Ralph would give me the right reasons, I'm all for it. So we worked out well. Over the years, Ralph, well, early in my association with the Hyde Park Legion, the USS Roosevelt was named ship of the county. So being Hyde Park, being the home front of FDR, we became one of the kingpin posts post Roosevelt. So in 2012, we had a U.S. Fleet Week, and then Roosevelt was in harbor in New York City. We planned a dinner, a trip. They toured the Roosevelt estate here. They went to the Vanderbilts, a few other places. And we gave them a huge dinner at the Rogers Point Boathouse. Ralph was the treasurer and basically the steering person of that whole event. He would suggest things, he controlled the money, everybody got paid, we didn't owe anybody a cent. And that was an incredible feat because there were a lot of people involved with it. And Ralph took the bull by the horns and really controlled that whole organization. So for that, Ralph, I applaud you. Every year we'd have a poppy drive. Ralph would organize that poppy drive, who went where, who collected what kind of money, and what the money was spent for. And we did that for many years until it really kind of fell apart. But it was during that time we collected lots of money and gave out lots of scholarships and things from that money until we found out that wasn't what the money was used for. But all that time, Ralph did an impeccable job. I challenge anybody to look at his records and find one penny missing. He was an incredible banker and accountant. All right, about 10, where's Uncle Mike?
Over there.
What was the first honor flight?
June of 2012.
2012.
2012, yes.
Well, Ralph
Mission 1.
Ralph went on the first honor flight to Washington, D.C. And that became like the golden flight of all of them. He is still renowned. Every time he goes to an honor flight convention, get-together, he is one of the few that still remain that went on that first honor flight. And he enjoyed it immensely. And I think it's really an honor for him to be one of the people to go on that first flight. Uncle Mike, I think you were involved with that too, weren't you?
We've been broadcasting.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And since then, we've sent boys and girls to Boy State and Girl State. And Ralph was always with me to screen the candidates. You talk about a gut-wrenching judging. We had candidates that were so close together. It was almost, it's like letting blood to try to figure out which one to send. We had such fine students to send to Girl State and Boy State. Some of them have gone on to the military academies, West Point and Annapolis, and I think one went to the Air Force Academy also. So we sent the right people, and Ralph was part of that whole thing. And Ralph would really scrutinize the candidates and pick out things that I wasn't really picking up on. So he had a keen eye for character and for the ability to be a leader. So we were involved with that over the years. His high point, I got pictures of one or two pictures back here of it. And we went to, we wanted to plan a post trip, and Greg came up with the idea of going to Normandy. And I said, wow, that'd be fantastic. Well, Ralph took the bull by the horns. He got a travel agent that he used, planned the whole trip, and it went off like incredible. Just an incredible trip. Something a regular tourist would have never, ever been able to do. When we got to Paris, we met with the first American Legion Post #1, the first American Legion to be created in 1919 in Pershing Hall in Paris. We visited the site. It became a department store because of financial difficulties and a whole lot of other politics that went on. But we did visit the original post of the American Legion. And at that point, talking with the commander of that American Legion post, he introduced us to the superintendent of the Normandy Beach Cemetery. And when we got to the Normandy Cemetery, he greeted us and took us on a personal tour of the Normandy Cemetery. We saw parts, we heard stories. We actually visited Teddy Roosevelt's grandson's grave that's there. Things that the regular tourists would never, ever have seen. They're all thanks to Ralph and his organizational skills. And it was incredible. I got sprung upon to read a prayer over the graves. You talk about a tear-jerking moment, I really locked on. Me, to read a grave over all of these fallen soldiers, it was absolutely incredible. So, anyway, the French trip was a grand success. There were some speed bumps, there always is in a trip. But all in all, it was a fantastic trip. Ralph went as high on the Eiffel Tower as he could go in his wheelchair. There was only one more level he could not get because there's all stairs going up. But he was there. And, you know, it's quite a sight to see Paris from the top of the Eiffel Tower. If you ever get to Paris, do not miss that little visit. All right, I mentioned before that Ralph had helped with he basically organized the Memorial Day and 4th of July parade floats. And through his keen eye and eye for detail, we have actually, in the whole many years that the Hyde Park Post's been in existence, we actually took a couple of trophies for our float in the Hyde Park Parade. And if it wasn't for Ralph getting that final detail just right, we probably wouldn't have got it. So let's hear for Ralph again. It has a special place in his heart, and I didn't realize it until today. All right. He's not just one to sit around. He belongs to a couple of different military organizations or veterans organizations. Our post, 1303, Band of Brothers, the Battle of the Bulge is an organization in Chester, New York. He would drive down basically an hour and a half every month to go to his Band of Brothers because they were all veterans of the Battle of the Bulge. He was secretary and treasurer of that. And where's Mike Speed? And he's also a member of Mike Speed's, is it Mended Swords? The Mended Swords. He does a lot of fundraising for veterans. Yeah, get this. You're probably about 95, 96, right? You usually picture somebody about that age group just kind of sitting down and relaxing. Not Ralph. There's a picture of him back there on top of a Spartan race platform. They climbed over a mountain with him in the chair. So, and he's got the That's incredible. He made it. They carried him up. I had a hard time just walking up those hills. They carried him up on that platform. Cadets, other military veterans and stuff, there was like 20, 30 people carrying that platform up and down that mountain. And the grade was a good 40 degrees or better. So it was incredible. Now, speaking of West Point area, every year Ralph gets an invitation to West Point to participate in one of their football games. I don't think it's the Army-Navy game, but it's one of the football games. And he personally gets invited to go to center field with the commanding general of West Point and is presented with a game, not just a regular football, but one of the footballs they play in the game as a trophy. So, how many people do you know that have a game football from West Point? Let me see a raise of hands. None. Yeah. Ralph's got a couple of them. And he has the cheerleaders come out, which aren't allowed on the field. So he has a sway over a 4-star general. That's pretty good, Ralph. That's pretty good. All right. Well, let's have a rousing round of applause for Ralph. We've already done a few, but I think one more really rousing applause. Great generation. Well, there he is. Thank you. I burned up that 3 minutes to then. So.
Thank you very much for some really wonderful stories and some grounding and clear examples of all of the incredible work that Ralph has continued to be involved in throughout his entire life. I mean, if that doesn't sum up in itself why Ralph is just such an exemplary nominee for this Hall of Fame, I don't know what else would, so thank you very much. I would like to now bring up our next speaker, my friend, Dutchess County Executive, Sue Serino.
Say a special thank you to you, Senator, for having it here in our hometown, with our hometown hero. It's just such an honor to be here, so thank you for including me. Ralph, my buddy. You know, we all think, right, we think we're busy. Oh my God, you show up to so many different events, and I don't know how you do it, but you are all over the place, and I'm just so humbled to be your friend. And I remember when you were with Mended Swords, with Mike, in that Jeep, and it was just amazing. I couldn't believe that you were doing it. And you did it. What a great accomplishment. And Mike Athanas, just all of the history that you've given us today, a lot of things that I didn't even know, I can't thank you enough. And a special thank you to all of our veterans that are here today and our active military that are here today fighting to keep us safe. God bless you and thank you so much. And also, Mike, you brought up a good thing about the honor flight. You know, I served with Colonel Senator Larkin, a great gentleman, and I made a promise to him that I would always talk about the honor flight. And Uncle Mike and Tina, thank you. You guys are always there for every single flight in the spring and in the fall. And if you haven't gone yet, and if there's veterans here, it is the most remarkable time. And ShopRite pays, I think they pay between $80,000 and $100,000 a year for our veterans to fly. And it's just such a humbling experience. And you can just go and just take a look at it. It's really amazing. So I am not going to read this whole proclamation, but I am going to read the last paragraph. And I always called him Mr. Osterhoudt, so Mr. Osterhoudt. Whereas Mr. Osterhout's heroism and commitment to his community and country make him the ideal individual to be introduced into the Veterans Hall of Fame in the New York State Senate. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, County Executive. It's wonderful to have you here. Now, please welcome to the podium Dutchess County American Legion Commander Dan Moore.
Senator. First of all, I would like everybody that's a veteran to please stand. Let's give a salute to our honorees. As a leader, sometimes you try to find a way to move on. And the inspiration that this gentleman provides to leaders of our Dutchess County American Legion is just unbelievable. I've watched him in county meetings, and he's usually pretty quiet, unless Ralph wants to make a point. And the whole room hears him. And you know what? He gets things done. Mike pointed that out so very, very well. And he took away 3/4 of my speech, but that's okay. this gentleman has been someone who has helped America understand that if you serve in the military, you're very special. And that if you serve in the military, you're keeping this country free, because it doesn't come without a price. So Ralph, first of all, I want to thank you for your heroism, because you definitely are a hero. Secondly, I would like to thank you for your leadership in guiding me as a county commander. I've been county commander for the American Legion Induction twice. Hopefully someone will step in my shoes pretty soon. I love what I do, but in the same token, it's time to get new generations. And one of the things we're looking to do is to have that younger generation join our forces. The American Legion is over 100 years old. There is a lot of wisdom, and that's a good example of it that comes from being that old. There's a lot of inspiration, and there's a lot of excitement that can come from doing the right thing. And the right thing is to keep our traditions alive, to bring up new thoughts, and change the way you do things to be more productive. And we can do that, but we can only do it with wisdom and thoughts and encouragement from people like Ralph Osterhoudt. Ralph has been an amazing, amazing friend, and more importantly, an amazing leader to this county. Not only as a soldier, not only as a citizen, but as a friend. He has been a dear friend, and it's helped me to get through some very difficult struggles and to lead this county in doing the right thing for veterans across this county. And we will continue to do that with help from people like Ralph. And I want to mention the Sons of the American Legion as well for a moment. His grandson is a son of the American Legion, and they help with the production that the American Legion does. Some of us have gotten to the point where we don't have the ability to continue on. So we have the Sons of the American Legion and the Auxiliary who help with all the programs that the American Legion has. So they become just as important. We're a family. We're not just men who served or women who served, because 20% of your military today are females. They need to have every bit of support that the rest of us have. If we have any females that have served in the military here, please stand up. Let's give them a nice round of applause. Thank you for your service, to say the least. And please continue. And if you're like Ralph, you're going to continue serving, even after the military. And that's what makes him so special. He does that at 96 years old, God bless him. You know. So please, give support to those. Thank them for their service, without doubt. And Senator, please continue doing what you're doing and giving support and recognizing people like Ralph Osterhoudt. Let's all give Ralph one major applause. One last word. Let's not forget veterans who are in our VA hospitals. They need our support. Let's not forget the families, our wives, or our spouses, I should say, are as important as everybody who wears that uniform. And without their support, we wouldn't have the heroes we have today. So whether you're the mom of a veteran, or a dad of a veteran, or you're the spouse of a veteran, you deserve our thanks as well. This is a great country. Let's keep it great. God bless you, God bless the American Legion, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. I would now like to bring up the Hyde Park Town Historian, Carney Reynolds.
I had a chance to interview several Hyde Park World War II soldiers and sailors, in the year 2009. And for one of the chapters in one of my books, I had a soldier actually write out the interview. I guess he didn't want me to make any mistakes or misprints about what he had to say. So I'll read this. It's only going to take less than 3 minutes, so don't worry. An interesting event happened during our stay at Colmar. We were very lucky to find a building that was intact enough for our communication center. In this, we set up our command post and switchboard operations. One night, about 2 or 3 a.m., I was sure I heard a noise like a baby crying. The night was still, quiet, and cold, and I figured I must have been mistaken about the crying. I called the officer of the day, and he arrived to investigate the nature of the sounds. Going to the basement with our guns drawn, in a corner were 19 persons with 2 infants. They had been there for quite some time without us knowing. Our medics were called. We gave the babies our rations of dried milk, attended their medical problems, gave them fresh clothes, and helped them get to another home with their neighbors. It was our opportunity to repay the German citizens for the kind treatment they had given us in our town and other towns. They thought we were going to kill them, and they even begged for their lives. I'd like to introduce the author of this paragraph, and that was Ralph Osterhoudt. I got through it. I get really emotional when I read that. There was one other moment that I'd like to tell you about. Ralph was one of 9 Hyde Park citizens that we represented Hyde Park when we were invited to visit the USS Roosevelt in Mayport, Florida. It's a DDG-80. It's a guided missile destroyer. And so we all took a flight down to Jacksonville and visited this ship. And we didn't realize it, and I don't know if Ralph realized it, but there were 9 flights of stairs on the ship. I think there's like 4 decks, but you had to go 9 up, 4 down, 5. I don't know. But he made it on every one of those flights of stairs. And I think he was having leg trouble and heart trouble, but he did it. And I want to thank you again for doing that, Ralph.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful story. I think it encapsulates perfectly the man who we're here to honor today. I would now like to introduce Ralph's son, Martin Osterhoudt.
I'm not a good speaker, but I just want to tell everybody thank you for coming on board. This means so much to him, and to about when I was 5 days old out of the hospital, him and his wife, my mother, adopted me as a Osterhoudt. And I thought that was fantastic. And I want to thank everybody for coming, family and friends and all that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of your help in organizing this incredible event that I'm so proud to be here. With that, we have, for those who don't know this scope, the 41st District encompasses 4 counties, 56 towns, and we are allowed to select one person for the Veterans Hall of Fame in 2023. And so there are many folks across our community who do incredible things, but it is absolutely my privilege and my honor to have chosen on behalf of our entire district, Ralph Osterhoudt Sr. as our nominee, or as our awardee and inductee into the 2023 Veterans Hall of Fame.
One more. Thank you so much.
And now we have Ralph has written some remarks that will be shared with us by his very close friend, Mike Speed.
You hear about this event and you have a ton of things in your mind and 6 other people take your speech, but with that being said, there's a reason why we're representing right now in a President's Museum library that was the World War II veteran, president at the time. The only iteration about the ice cold water, it was the very first time Ralph had ever had ice. Eleanor herself chunked it off of a block and gave it to him, correct? And it was lemonade. Yeah, lemonade. Real quick, how do you say nice things about your best friend? Ralph didn't start off as my best friend. I met Ralph at the VA hospital. I was his nurse in the Poughkeepsie Clinic for some good 11 years before I advanced inside of the system. Trying to make the clinic personal, I came up with an idea. I shared it with the senator. It would probably be abuse today if you got caught doing it, but I threatened, it was flu shot season, and I had threatened, I think there's a few people here I threatened. I think I even threatened you too, Tom, right? All right. So, yeah, and Adam, I think I even threatened Adam at the same time also. But what I did was I told my guys, I want a photograph of you to put up on a board. And the reason why, a veterans clinic, if you go inside there's only 3 people's pictures up on the wall. President, Vice President, and Secretary of the VA. Neither one of them are ever going to walk through that door. All right, it was one of the things that I said. We talked about making the veterans place a home. Well, what do you have in your home? Your photograph. So I said, hey, let's make it personal. Let's get photos of everybody. So, had barely even known this guy yet, and I'm threatening him with a flu needle saying, listen, you don't bring me a photograph of you the next time you come in, I'm going to stab you 9 times with this needle. Right? The man pulled me away. The photograph he brought me was a picture of Hitler's command car when they liberated in Luxembourg, Germany. Instantly, I was like, all right, man, you're a badass. All right. It started a friendship. Started going to football games. And other people that had a lot more smarts about doing things said, hey, why don't you form a charity? So Ralph was the instrument around this charity. And what it was I could never get young veterans to come out and do an event to gain help. But I got 60, 70 of them to come out and carry him in Spartan races, all right? That's a shirt from 2019. That was the last West Point one. To say that you trust complete strangers to carry you 6 feet over your head, like Mike said, up mountains, down things, around stuff. It was incredible. More, you know, than what I have. You know, I don't want to say the word, but this man emulates that. He emulates a time period where men were men. I hate to say it that way, but we fall short. We fall short of the things and our duties that we should, as men, represent. That generation did. That was all my Battle of the Bulge movies, everything else that inspired me. I did 21 years in the military. I tell everybody I stayed long enough to form an opinion, you know. But this man bridged a gap where young veterans that were suffering from drug addiction, from alcohol, from just being lost, from just not being totally organized and then being brought home. And oh, hey, by the way, here goes a job for you. Now do everything normal. Sorry guys, when you get out of the military, you're institutionalized. You're told when to go to the bathroom, what time you'll eat. All right, by the way, we'll be on the helicopter, make sure all your gear is packed by this time. And bring everything you need, you know. That's that generation. That's what our young people do. This man was instrumental in starting Mended Swords, and it was a thought of not what we could do for ourselves, but for people that we saw suffering, for things that we saw going on in the community. NCOs in the military are your mother and your father, all right? They're the ones that are gonna be right behind you all the time. There is a bridge gap in this audience that goes from World War II. Many Vietnam veterans that I see out here that have been down to an active duty Army captain that came up here. Never met Ralph before, but heard about the event, and she's like, hell yeah, I'm there, all right? That's the attitude and the mentality that keeps us safe, all right? That's what this man did. Over the years, starting this charity, I was exposed to a lot of things that this man told me, all right? Going to Washington, D.C. with him on a trip by ourselves, we went through the Holocaust Museum. One of the things, if you've never seen it, go and see it, all right? As soon as you walk in, you're inside of an elevator. It was, Tom, right? I mean, it was awe-inspiring. You walk inside the elevator, it's very industrial looking. And the lady closes you in. It was all, listen to me, there's all combat vets inside of this room. He looks up at us when the door closes and he goes, this is what the gas chamber looked like. So we're like, okay. And then we heard the story about what he witnessed there. Whether you know history to be true or not, the gas chambers were not blown up by the Germans on the retreat. Ralph will tell you a story about how the American engineers did it so the world would not hate the German people. You know, these guys, they fought against these people every day, all right? He'll tell you stories about when we went to New Orleans to the War Museum where he's been interviewed, all right? Well, needless to say, he's got 2-century coins from the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which nobody ever leaves with 2-century coins. The man has it because he possesses that era and charismatic nature of that generation. When we went to the War Museum in New Orleans, he came up to us one year and he goes, you know, guys, before I die, I want to go see that museum. So I was like, all right, hey, rock and roll, let's go. That's every dime we're raising right now is going for that trip. Missy, put your hand up. She ran a bike event for us for that. 4,000 of the dollars that we took there were from her, all right, and from her event personally, all right? It's all about people. It's all about people coming together that have been affected different ways. Joe represents Congressman Ryan. That's a congressman that lost young people in Iraq, whether you know it, as a captain from West Point, all right? When he met this man, he was awe-inspired by him, just by some of the stories. If you want to look back, we cut his office in Newburgh, right? Is it the Newburgh? We cut the ribbon in that office. Why? because that generation represented freedom. Everything else that we have done in the military since then has only maintained a level of what this generation went. His son Ralph going to Vietnam, both of them, all right? The generations that are in here to, like I said now, active duty. That span is over 80 years, guys. There's a lot of freedom that is represented in this room by people you don't even know their first name. All right? So with that being said, I want to tell my best friend, thank you. Whether you know or not, him and his wife adopted over 100 kids in the years that they were together, all right? That's what, he has that nature to draw you in, all right? He has that ability to be able to capture you with a single smile. This man raises a lot of money when we go out and do events, trust me. I'm not afraid to put him out there. One of my comments when we go to the Stormville Flea Market, is it not right, Tom? I will not feed this man today unless you donate money. And then people go, oh. So he's a money maker, all right? You want to do an event, that's the guy you want to bring. He says our organization has kept him alive, all right? Ralph, you've kept me alive, all right? When my son was deployed to Afghanistan, the man was standing next to me. When my son was injured in Afghanistan and flew home, he was standing right next to me, all right? That's the person that's standing before you. I feel like this is more like a comedian roast or something like that, you know? I mean, but I have the privilege now of reading his speech. And I apologize if I break up while I read it, but you have to understand where this man came from. If you really get to know Ralph and you literally listen to the stories, he'll tell you about young men being half blown apart. And he told the driver of the vehicle to stop because he saw the young man put his hand up. Ralph went and cradled this individual until he passed his way. The hurt and turmoil that this man has suffered, he went back to Pennsylvania to try to locate the kid's parents. He was never able to find them. How much do you think that cost him for our freedom? That's just one of the stories that I have the advantage of being a best friend and learning. I've held this man while he was crying, telling us about stuff that was painful for him. You know, you sit there and you tell about the story of the kids inside the basement. One of the things that he didn't tell you in that story, and maybe he didn't feel proper about doing it, we ordered him to shell that city. They went there the day before to clear observation points. Bell towers and city cathedrals were the #1 spot. We didn't really have radar back then, guys. It was observation. They'd go ask the Burgermeister for permission to set up in the observation booth. And when he told them no, they'd back up 20 miles and shell the place flat. If you ever look at the city of Cologne, you'll see the Cathedral of Cologne. Never really thought much about it. Giant, giant cathedral surrounding it. 2 bridges off to the side in the photograph that are in the water. We got down there and then I saw a smirk from Ralph that I haven't seen in a very long time. He says, you know why that cathedral's still standing? I was like, no, why? I said, you know, they saved it and stuff. And he laughed. He said, no, we missed it. That's the person that we're honoring today. They saw these young kids playing in the square the day that they went and asked the Burgermeister for permission, and he denied them. They leveled the city. He'll tell you stories about being frozen in train cars as we shipped them across the German country because the Germans were like, these people are crazy, there's no way we're going to move them in the middle of the winter. That man represents the resolve of this country. that still exists today. It's the reason why we go to foreign shores and free people to give them the rights that we have today, that we enjoy, as sometimes not very well represented by us Americans. We sometimes forget the cost that was paid. That generation almost can't speak for itself anymore. But yet so much of what we enjoy, this building, represents that time here. So I'm going to read these words. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to this very important event of my life. The first 20 years of my life was not too great. Before the Great Depression, worsening during the Depression, rationing, being drafted to basic training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina with the Army, with the Air Force to study communications, learning to operate the Enigma German decoding machine, the Morse code, sophomore training on the two, and then he ran a 240 millimeter railgun in the Army, just as big as what you would see on a battleship. Born on March 15th, 1926, 6 sisters, 5 brothers, raised on a 20-acre farm. Father worked for Gerald Morgan and Franklin Roosevelt as the flower gardens and hedge person part-time. I worked part-time mowing the grass and gathering hay from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Can you get your kids to work that hard now? For $5 a day, I remember so well, one hot day, Eleanor came out with a pitcher with a block of ice that she had chopped up that was broken into cubes. We went to the new Statsburg School the first year it was open in 1931. I was to graduate June 23rd, 1944, but the draft board had other reasons. I can't graduate with my class. 57 years later, John Golden got in touch with Governor Pataki, and I received my diploma. A person from Albany came down with the Roosevelt graduation class in his presentation. He mentioned that he did not remember ever seeing a graduate class with one of the gradsons in the law present and his family. And he also said he never remembered seeing a senior graduating, 75 years old, name on the diploma. He had a few days to get signed up and called to get to the train at the Statsburg to Albany. There was a big demand for 18-year-olds. Everyone passed. Next letter was to report to Camp Dix, couple of days, uniform induction. My orders were to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to the artillery. 5 months of intensive training, orders to report to Fort Meade, Maryland, at the Pole Center. We had an unknown time we were leaving. We had to leave from Friday at 5 p.m. to Monday at 4 a.m. Some guys had no money for the last trip home. Forever, there were several taxis waiting to take trips from Penn Station to Grand Station. Seats were never a problem. Every civilian stood to give the military their seat. Once I said, guys, a time that does not exist this much anymore. All right? In Fort Meade, there was a problem. It was a no-stop. The engineers and the conductors would get lost. Trains would idle about 5 miles an hour for a couple of hundred to jump off. Christmas Eve, we boarded the ship. There were 6,300. It was not a pleasant sight. They had told us the only way we were coming home was to win the war. We were homesick, scared, and seasick. We were off, not allowed, open windows or on deck. The ship was it was a sister ship for the Titanic, the Aquitania, I apologize. Similar to the Titanic, 4 masts, 750 hammocks. Most trip was waiting in line or hanging over the side, seasick. Give a bowl of cornflakes with a banana for lunch. We zigzagged for 5 days to avoid the German submarines. Anchored off of Glasgow, Scotland, trained to Southampton, crossed the channel in an open troop carrier to Normandy at Lever. Oh, I said that wrong too, Laharve, right? Laharve, I apologize. See, my education, I missed some of it too. And 2 feet of cold frozen waters, frozen clothes, shoes, and socks for combat landing on Normandy. We walked over the deer runs to Jefferson, to Camp Lucky Strike, 20 acres of tents, tubs with water. Some of them gasoline burning for heat and washing. Still nothing to eat, only sea rats. Next morning we were going to the train station. What a surprise. We were loaded on 40 and 8s, 40 men or 8 horses. We entered. They slid closed the doors after throwing in 2 bales of hay, which we used it for anything slammed and locked the door. Okay, after going, so basically what Ralph told us, instead of using the hay bales, they chose to take the straw from the hay bales and fill the cracks in between the wooden cars. When you go to the Holocaust Museum, there's one of those cars there. We had a really awakening moment from him explaining that to us about how the snow would draft up inside the car while they were going. After going 50 miles, we used the hay to stuff the cracks in the floors and walls. For 2 days, we traveled day and night, not even a cup of coffee. Next stop was just outside of Paris, outside of... See, look at that's a good friend, man. He don't even make me look bad. This is where we would find out where we were going, north or south. I'm in the Army Artillery 575 5th Field Artillery. Our assignment is the Battle of the Bulge under General Patton to South France. A French area with no U.S. troops, the French guns were not large enough to blow up 3 of the bridges, or had any technical people with the training to use the Enigma that was my assignment. All replacement supplies came from Germany over those bridges. 25 years after the war, I was asked to come to Washington Embassy, 25 years after receiving a letter from the French Embassy to come to Washington, D.C. for an award for the Battle of the Colmar Pocket. 3rd Army, 7th Army with Patton, Bastogne, and Mannerheim, 1 special medal of French Croix de Guerre. I always like it how he says it. He's got that roll. And then he also went for the Purple Heart that he had never received. Commander too busy with his friends to write up the paperwork for his award. We were busy in the deep woods. You know, part of reading this speech, and I don't see it in here that I think you guys should know. Ardennes Forest, the Germans learned right away that the 88s, if they blew them up in the trees, they would injure more guys than if they just hit them with an artillery round. Ralph said something very sobering the night when we were in New Orleans about the porcupine people. People walking around with embedded wood shears in them from when the trees were blown up above them. In so much immense pain that they had no knowledge of where they were walking. They walked right into the enemy who walked around. The porcupine people. Remember that. It's not something you'll read about in history books. Looking for a spot to set up our guns, our Jeep hit a mine and exploded. The driver and I were thrown out. Our buddies were thrown underneath the burning Jeep. We both tried to pick up the Jeep. We were burning also. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks at another location. We were setting up in another location and Patton's artillery was trying to get in over the hedgerows. He knew on the other side there was 10 tanks waiting for our group trying to get through. Patton ordered 10 more to go through, and 50 men dead. He ordered 10 more, and 50 more went through. 100 men, 20 tanks, gone. Our artillery guns were on the Rhine from the south to the Bastogne. Over 20 car bridges and 35 railroad bridges were destroyed by our main targets were German towers, and enemy soldiers could spot us from 10 miles. That's the cathedrals that I was telling you about in the areas. Our first assignment was the 3 bridges over the Rhine that the Germans used for bringing in supplies to the Colmar pocket. Many people starved. We took care of the cathedrals first. Observators, lookouts. They could see us for miles. The train bridges next, and the last, the vehicle bridges. From here at the Colmar pocket, we went north to join the American troops. Our guns were very heavy. After we had blown up the bridges the next day, the engineers would install new pontoon bridges. Because our guns were so heavy, the pontoons sank, so that when we were crossing, the only thing that you could see was the flag sticking up out of the water, because their guns were so heavy when they went across the pontoons. Our guns had a range between 12 and 20 miles. It required 21 soldiers to lift shells that were 350 pounds at one, and then the enemy found a new way to fight. They used small guns and destroyed the branches. So this is where I was telling you about the branches falling in on their group. There was about 2 feet of snow. It was very cold. The next day, there were many that didn't get up. We had a prayer for them. Leave them alone. They're not cold anymore. They're not homesick. And they're not hungry anymore. And if you get a chance, go to the beautiful museum there. There's a tape there. This was the tape that Ralph got interviewed for while we were there. It was an unbelievable trip. We spent 5 days down there. We spent 3 days inside the museum. I will tell you this much. We brought this man down on Bourbon Street Halloween night. To say that I have memories that I will carry to my grave is an understatement, okay? Funniest thing that comes to mind, how many of you know who Shrek is? Ralph had never known who Shrek was. He saw a couple dressed in green going by, a man and a woman, and he was like, why are they dressed like that? So needless to say, when we went back to the hotel, we watched Shrek. I thought it was comical. You know? We had a prayer for them. I want to reiterate these words because I've heard Ralph say this many years. They're not cold. They're not sick. They're not in pain anymore. They're not hungry anymore. There's a tape there where I was asked to make on file. On my return home to finish my time, I was stationed in Heidelberg and was running a prisoner of war camp. Good break for me. I signed up to go to Bazat, how do you say it? The French place? What was it called? The university you went to? Biarritz. All right, Biarritz University. The class I chose was electrical and graphic art. Good choice. I'm still in business after almost 65 years. So this is another one of those, if you know Ralph, you know the basis of that story. 10 requests came down from headquarters to send students. He just happened to be the company clerk. He put his name on one of them. So thank you for allowing me to read this. Thank you for bumping through with me. What I will tell you is that this man is a sheer piece of history. You have people in here that were carried in Spartan races with him, in which we carried. He's done 8 so far. June is going to be our 9th one. I've already gave the senator a very good military saying. She's been voluntold, all right, that she has to show up for this event, all right? Why is that so important? It represents a humbleness. Tom Rizzo and Tom in the back, please stand up, and Tom and Ralph. Vietnam veterans were not given the respect when they came home. These men were spit at when they came. Greg, I'm sorry. Bruce. And Bruce? Oh, Bruce, I'm sorry. Bruce, stand up too. These men were all Vietnam veterans. All right? Our charity chose the first year to represent Vietnam veterans in a different light publicly. I want to do the same thing right now with Ronald. Another thing Ralph will tell you is female military vets are very misrepresented these days. All right? We actually had a female general, General Lee, jump over in a dress at West Point to come and shake this man's hand over the railing. I never thought I'd ever see a woman in a dress jump over the railing, let alone a general. All right? And it goes to represent the onus and the importance of that generation. Obviously, your local senator chose him. She chose him for a reason. He represents a time and a group of people that are almost completely gone. He's 97 years old. And the only thing that Mike did not tell you that we do is we were at West Point and how this whole charity first got started. Ralph fought paintball with West Point cadets. First time he came to me, you know, I'm a nurse, I have a knowledge of medication. I'm like, man, you're on so much Coumadin and blood thinners. I'm like, no, we ain't bringing you out there, because if you know, paintball hurts. So somebody brought me one day, he told me, he says, I survived the depression, polio, influenza, COVID twice. He survived COVID twice, all right? All these different things that this man survived. He says, you're not gonna let me fight paintball. I'm like, all right. I go, so a friend of mine who, I don't play golf, but a friend of mine was playing golf, and he said, come to the driving range with me. I'm like, I don't wanna go. And he goes, no, I need you to see something. And if you go to a driving range, you'll see that everybody's trying to kill that guy collecting the balls out there, all right? He's like an automatic target once he starts going back and forth. That's where we got the brainchild of going ahead and inventing a tank that Ralph rides in. Everything in history, everything that you involve yourself will have a lesson that teaches you. I approached a metal company, Putnam Steel, about building the cage around Ralph's ATV. And there was two people that owned the company, an American man and a nationalized Chinchillian man. The American man who owned the company, he owned 70% of the company. When we asked him about approaching this and doing this project, he goes, how much money you got? And I'm like, you know, I'm like, you want me to come work for you? You know. He told me, the American guy told me, we can't help you. There's not enough money into it for us to make it worth our while. The Chinchillian man stood up and he said, this is for my military veterans. I said, yes, sir. He says, we're gonna do it. He goes, I'll pay for it personally. And he did. That's what this country is about. You know, we listen to all these things going on in the news and everything. You know, one of the things about fundraising is we open ourselves up for a public platform. I can't tell you how many foreign-speaking people have walked up to me saying, my son, my daughter, and they're in a military uniform of the U.S. Armed Forces. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the basis of what this whole country was dissolved and designed to do. I love you, brother. Now I'll shut up.
Thank you so much, Mike, for both your stories, for your courage, for your resilience, and for sharing the words of our incredible honoree and inductee today. With that, everyone, I would like to give Ralph Osterhoudt Sr. one more round of applause. Thank you all very much. That concludes our program. So thank you all for coming. We have some refreshments. Thank you all very much.
How are you?
Is this
Long time since I've seen you.
Juan.
Well, that's awesome.